there's a comment here that I think I'm going to put up on the screen that kind of plays off of what you just said. So pro se is always something that gets thrown around for people who can't afford a good attorney, but really a lot goes into it. Lots of court etiquette, weird nuances, stuff that will get your case stamped with a big denied if not executed properly. They make it like this on purpose.
They do.
There are many. Go ahead.
Yeah, they do. So she's absolutely. I have no idea how to. Miss Custer. What?
Yeah. Tabby Custer.
Tabby Custer. She's absolutely right. I call it Byzantine because that's really the word. It's this bizarro maze. And so by the time this happened to me, right, I was an experienced litigator. I don't think I'm the best attorney that's ever walked the planet. I don't think I'm the worst, right? But I'm not a moron, and I have an idea on how to litigate. So and I know how to read the rules. So by the time this happened to me, I went off and hired an attorney. So really, her point comes down to a couple of things. Number one, nobody can afford this. All right, once you get an attorney like this unethical bad apple that's getting involved here, they run costs up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, the total costs actually spent on attorneys' fees, professionals, debt generated, and all of that stuff between my ex-wife and me in our case is bouncing just under $1 million. $1 million. My ex-wife has billed over $264,000. I've lost over $200,000 in actual money gone, right? $400,000 in lost attorney's fees and damage to my business. I mean, it's insane. Nobody can afford this. Okay. So lots of people wind up as pro se just because they're just priced out of the world. Now, if you're an attorney and you've got a head start over those pro se people, you go into this thinking, this can't be that complex. It's still just law. It's still just, what we learn in law school, issue, rule, application, conclusion, right? Oh, no. Sorry. Not only do you have the civil rules, so the standard rules of civil procedure for your state, but then you'll have local county rules on local county civil procedure rules. Then you'll have family law local rules, right? And then on top of that, your judge may have their own set of quasi rules that they may have posted on their website that that may or may not. At one point, my judge, who has had a real lack of experience before she took the bench, she'd only been on the bench for 12 weeks before she got our case, and she had no family law experience before she got there. Okay, but at one point she issues an order, and the order says you violated this rule. And I'm reading this order, and I take it down to the self-help office inside of the courthouse, which is staffed with other attorneys. And I'm like, I can't figure out what it is she's talking about. So at one point, we get 4 attorneys in this room, okay? 4 attorneys, and we're comparing these 3 different sets of rules, and we're trying to figure out, what is she talking about? She's saying this is violent. We're like, I have no idea what she's talking about. So your point is, and Greg Ellis made this point in his podcast, which is that the system is set up to be confusing so that people can't get through it, and even attorneys can't get through it. I mean, you said this yourself, right? Attorneys are like, I don't understand how the hell this is coming down this way. And then in the end, what it really boils down to is, money is more important than kids. Word counts are more important than kids. Procedure is more important than kids, right? Doing all of these other things that are not truly important are placed at a higher importance than actually resolving these issues.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I had to laugh when you said attorneys don't know. So I was fresh out of law school when my own personal case started. And I was trained to be, I'd worked in the sports industry for 6-8 years already, and I'd been trained to be a labor and employment attorney. Well, in labor and employment law, it's if X and Y happened, then Z is the solution. It's a math equation. It's very black and white, most areas of law. In family law, you operate in this everything's a gray area. There's so much discretion. Decisions are made so fast. And I think the legal profession, at least in family law, has moved away from substance to form. We want these big fancy briefs. We want this looking all pretty. I had a client this week that I had drafted a brief, and opposing party had like a 30-page brief. And I sent over the brief to the client, and it was 6 pages long. And they're like, well, why is theirs like 30 pages and ours is 6? Isn't that going to mean the judge is going to be reading their side more? And we walked through it, and it really only needed, I'm like, they threw in all these issues that don't matter. They, like you mentioned, word count, these big briefs that just are off the mark. And in reality, if we bring it back to, okay, what are we really looking at? Like the state of California, the standard for a parent is good enough. That sounds kind of scary, but it essentially amounts to if a parent's good enough, they should get visitation. And we make all these nuanced and complex arguments and these dozens of pages in briefs and 700 docket filings. I didn't know there were 700 docket filings worth of information that needed to be submitted to the courts. So I think just the profession in general, and that's something to look at when you're researching. Is this person style over substance? Is this person going to talk a good game, show a good game, or are they about the issues?
But more importantly than that, I mean, because I'm all about the fact that these people don't belong in our profession. Well, maybe that's a little too harsh. They don't belong in family law. They belong in big business litigation. That's where these sorts of tactics belong. And we're not talking, my case, or your case, or anybody else's family law case is not Microsoft versus Apple, right? These sorts of create conflict, stew it up tactics don't belong here, and they're unethical when they are used.